Don't run from me. Do not fucking run from me. You already knew the type of nigga I am before you got here. Don't play. Relax and relax.
In the last 24 hours, P. Diddy's case has only gotten worse, and his death penalty is getting closer and closer. Special Agent John R. Whitaker from the FBI has just leaked 10 audios where P. Diddy confesses to all the crimes without knowing it. In each audio, the rapper comments on a different crime, and it was because his phone was tapped that the FBI managed to build the accusations and put him behind bars. In this video, we will show you the 10 audios in detail, and you will see that Diddy, unintentionally, confesses to crimes that you will be completely shocked by such cruelty. Whitaker, a 15-year veteran of the FBI, confesses that he has not seen such cruelty in all his years in law enforcement. He says, "Not even in the most famous serial killers have I seen such evil." Luckily, due to an anonymous tip, we started tapping Diddy's cell phone months ago, and today we can be here. The first months of listening revealed just ordinary conversations, business, parties, inflated egos. But then one night, a call picked up by accident changed everything. An unexpected, almost casual confession that would open the doors to the rapper's darkest secrets. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. What I heard, what you all will hear, will change everything you think about power, fame, and humanity. You have the right to listen. Let's go. This is the first leaked audio.
You know, in life, there is always someone who goes beyond the limits. There's always someone who smiles at you one day and the next tries to take away everything you've built. I don't tolerate this. I never tolerated it. In my house in Beverly Hills, there's a place that no one knows about, deep in the basement, behind a false wall. From the outside, it looks like just an ordinary warehouse, but if you know where to press, the wall slides like magic. Inside, you find what I call the room. It is completely soundproof. No matter what happens inside, no matter how loud someone screams, no one will hear. This was a requirement of mine when they built it. I spent a fortune to guarantee this. The best engineers, they didn't ask questions. That's what I like. Professionals. At first, I just used the space to store things. You know, things I didn't want anyone to see. But one day, someone crossed the line. A guy I trusted. He stole from me, betrayed me. I remember looking into his eyes as he explained himself, full of apologies. I smiled, nodded, and said everything was fine. And so, that same night, I took him there. He had no idea. He said he wanted to show something. A new idea, a project. He even seemed excited. As soon as the door closed, I saw in his eyes that he noticed. It was at that moment that he understood what he had done. And you know what's funny? He didn't even try to run. He stood there, shaking like a child. I didn't need to scream. I didn't have to do anything but look at him and say, "No one can hear the screams in here." And it was true. No matter what happened inside, the world outside remained the same. People lived their lives. They laughed, they cried, they did their business. And he never left that room. After that, I learned something. Sometimes you don't need to seek revenge. You just need a place where the world can't hear you, where you can solve your problems the way you want. Today, that room is just another tool in my arsenal. It's not personal. It's just necessary.
When I first heard this audio, my skin froze. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. No emotion, no remorse, just a man explaining something he believed to be normal, but what he called a necessary tool. I could only call it a chamber of horrors. And knowing that this place could still exist, that kept me up at night. But that's not even close to the other leaked audio. Listen to the next audio.
You know what I always found fascinating? How people react when they feel lost, when they don't know what's coming, when every step seems like the last. It's in these moments that you see their true selves. Not the masks, not what they show to others, but who they really are. That's why I created the maze. Not everyone understands the art of fear, but me, I understand. This place is in one of my old mansions in Florida, one that no one uses anymore. Down there, deep below the basement, I had an entire system of tunnels excavated. An architect friend of mine designed everything. He thought he was building something for a show or an immersive experience, you know? But I had other plans. It's more than a maze. It's a game, a test. And you know the best of all? There are cameras in every corner, recording everything. Not just the image, but the sound too. Every sigh, every step, every scream, all captured in high definition. I called it my personal cinema. The process is simple. The person enters or is placed inside, depending on the situation. They don't know where they are or how they got there. The lights are dim, just enough to see the surrounding walls. Some doors lead to dead ends, others lead to traps. Most just take you deeper. The first thing they do, they scream for help. They always scream, and I just watch, sitting comfortably in my office with a glass of wine, watching everything happen on the screen. Desperation appears quickly. First they try to walk quickly, run, but after a while, after hours, they start to slow down. You can see the tiredness, the sweat, the panic. This is where things get interesting, when they realize there is no way out, that no matter where they go, the labyrinth only consumes them. Some start to pray, others start laughing as if they are losing their minds. And some do things I never imagined, things that even I wouldn't have the courage to do. And of course I left some false clues. A note on the wall saying the exit is near, or a distant sound, as if someone was coming to help them. It's amazing how false hope is crueler than pure despair. You might be thinking, why did I do that? It's not that complicated. The world is full of people who play games with you, people who think they can deceive you, manipulate you. So I gave them the end game, a game where they have to face the consequences of who they are, and in the end, no one really wins. The maze wasn't made for that. It was made to consume, to teach. And for me, well, it was just entertainment. I still have all the recordings saved. Maybe one day I'll watch it again.
I thought I heard it all, but this was something beyond human understanding. He didn't just create a private hell. He watched it, fed on it, as if it were a spectacle. He was a monster who turned despair into entertainment. And the worst of all, he didn't even try to hide how much he enjoyed it. Shall we go to audio 3? Well, I promise you it gets worse.
Dinners have always been my specialty. Not these public events full of cameras and fake applause. No, I'm talking about something more intimate, more guys. You know, people don't pay attention to what they eat. They place trust in the hands of the host. A waiter puts something on the table and they eat it without thinking twice. That's what I was inspired by. These dinners were only for the select, the privileged, people who thought they were untouchable. They always came thinking they were about to experience something exclusive, unique, and in a way, they were right. I hired chefs who didn't ask questions, the kind of person who works for art, not morals, and the ingredients, well, let's just say they weren't found in any market. Each dish had a piece of a puzzle that no one there knew they were putting together. One of my favorites was the redemption ravioli. Small, elegant, filled with something special, the heart of a child. But not just any child, I'll tell you that later. Then there was the bouquet of silence, a soup with a special broth. The secret, the broth was made using plants that grew in soil enriched with the ashes of someone everyone at the table knew. Nobody knew, of course, but I knew. And watching them savor each spoonful, laughing, toasting, celebrating, that was my true feast. Do you know what was most fascinating? How each dish seemed to affect them. I watched closely. Some laughed louder, as if they were trying to drown out something inside themselves. Others became more silent, as if an invisible weight was beginning to crush them. And then there were those who simply cried, tears flowing for no apparent reason. They never understood why. But the best of all was the dessert, the final connection. A small cake, delicately decorated, but with a very special ingredient. Small fragments of an object, something that had belonged to them or someone they had harmed in the past. A piece of a ring, a strand of hair, anything with a story. After dinner, reactions were mixed. Nightmares, existential crises. One or two even disappeared from society altogether. I never bothered to know why. It wasn't about them. It was about what I could do, about control. These dinners, they weren't just meals, they were rituals, a way to give them back the shadows they tried to hide. But me, I just watched with a glass of wine in my hand, toasting what they would never realize.
This wasn't just a crime. It was refined perversity, masquerading as art. He manipulated people, made them accomplices without them knowing. And the worst of all, he had fun with it. Every word in the audio was a reminder that for him, control was more than power. It was a form of pleasure. Shall we go to the next confession?
Do you know what happens when you turn off all the lights? When the world around you disappears and all that's left is the sound of your own breathing. In the dark, there are no statuses, no faces, no names. In the dark, we are all equal. That's what made me create the dark room. I wanted a place where I could be in absolute control, but without the distractions of the world. A space where the only thing that mattered was what I decided would happen. And the baby oil, well, the oil had its purpose. People don't understand the power of touch. When you turn off all the lights, touch becomes everything. Sliding, slipping, making it impossible to hold, running away, fighting. The oil was perfect for this. An invisible layer, but present everywhere. It left no fingerprints or traces that could be traced. A clean, smooth surface, as if nothing had ever happened there. I remember the first time I used it. Everything was ready. The room was so dark that even I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. Just the sound, their heartbeats, and the smell. The smell of fear is unmistakable. I walked around, letting the silence speak louder than any words. In the dark, their minds did the work for me. Every step I took, they listened. Every movement, every breath, everything was amplified. And the oil? He guaranteed that even if they tried to fight, they wouldn't be able to. They slipped, fell, hit walls without knowing where they were. It was beautiful, actually. Pure chaos, absolute despair, all captured without a single light being turned on. And when it was all over, it was as if nothing had happened. No traces, no evidence. Just the silence of the dark room and the sweet smell of the oil that evaporated over time. Some say that in the dark you can get lost. I say in the dark you can find yourself. You discover who you really are. And most importantly, you discover who others are. And my friend, they are nothing.
That was different. This was raw. He didn't just control his victims. He fed on their vulnerability, on the fear he created. In the dark, he saw himself as a god, and the oil was the perfect symbol of his dirty, invisible, irrefutable power. It was perversion in its purest state. That scared me for days. But I know you want to hear the next crime, right? So let's go.
There are things you only understand when you see the world as a chessboard. Ordinary people are nothing but parts. Pawns, most of them. Disposable movements, easy to replace. And when you learn this, you realize that you can take pieces off the board without anyone noticing. It all started with an experiment. Small, discreet. One neighborhood here, another there. Places forgotten by the system, where no one asks questions, where children run through the streets without supervision, without protection. It was the perfect setting. I call it the void theory. The idea is simple. If you start deleting people slowly, the community starts to disintegrate. First a child disappears, then another. Parents lose hope, they begin to close themselves off. Silence takes over, and people who could ask questions just leave. Each disappearance was calculated. No one was taken at random. It wasn't about numbers, it was about impact. The boy everyone knew, the girl who always rode her bike around the block. When these children disappeared, it was like ripping the heart out of a body, and the body could no longer function. I had my methods. Unmarked vans, well-trained teams, places where no one would ever look. But the real secret, that's what happened afterwards. These children were not just taken, they were erased, not just from records, but from collective memory. I would make sure that within a few months, no one would talk about them. And you know what's most impressive? How people accept this, how they just move on. Mothers cry for a while, neighbors put up posters, but eventually the posters tear, the tears dry, and emptiness sets in. Over time, these neighborhoods became what I call communities of the disappeared, places where the despair was so deep that no one dared ask. And best of all, it was irreversible. When you knock the right pieces off the board, the game cannot continue. And why? You might be wondering why. Control, always control. Nothing in this world causes more fear than the idea of being erased, of disappearing without a trace. And when you control that fear, you control everything.
That was the worst of all. He wasn't just confessing to disappearances, he was admitting to destroying entire communities. It wasn't just individual victims. It was a legacy of fear, of emptiness. It was too monstrous to believe, but I knew it was real. Let's go to the 6th.
Some people keep old photos, others collect trophies. I prefer sounds. For me, there's nothing purer, more real than the music people make when they're at their wits' end, when they realize they have no way out. I started by chance. It was just supposed to be a test, you know? Something to capture a special moment. But when I heard the recording for the first time, something changed in me. The sound was perfect. The heavy breathing, the tremor in the voices, the muffled screams. It was raw, visceral, a symphony of despair. So I decided to save it. Not one or two, but all. Over time, it became almost a ritual. Whenever, say, an event happened, I would put the recorder in the corner of the room and let it do its work. Nothing more. I just pressed the button and waited. Some tapes are more intense than others. There are those where the victim begs. They always say the same things. Please, I have a family. I didn't do anything. At first, I even listened carefully as if I was studying, but then it started to be like background music, something I could leave playing while I relaxed. And you know what's most interesting? Each person has a unique sound. Some cry, others scream. There are those who remain silent, but even silence says something. The sound of skin against the floor, the click of chains. Every detail is part of the track. My favorites? There's a ribbon. I think it's number 17. That's special. A woman, strong, determined. He didn't scream once. She just stood there, looking at me, defiant. But do you know what she did? She started to sing a church song, voice out of tune, but full of anger. I listen to this tape whenever I want to remember how resilient people are until they aren't anymore. And I keep them all, catalogued, numbered, organized like music albums. Sometimes I play one just to remember. Other times I listen when I need inspiration. It's not about cruelty. It's not about pain. It's about control. Knowing that those voices exist because I wanted them to exist. That song was only created because I pressed the record button.
This wasn't just perversity, it was celebration. He didn't just inflict suffering, he turned it into art, into personal entertainment. Knowing that he not only did this, but listened to those tapes over and over again as a hobby, that was something my mind refused to process.
I have always been fascinated by the desert. So vast, so empty. There's nowhere to run. There's no one to hear your screams, just you and the silence. I knew that if I wanted to truly test what someone was made of, I would have to take everything from them. The comfort, the security, the hope. That's how the idea was born. Picking them up and putting them in the middle of nowhere. No water, no food, no map. Just a small radio, one of those battery-operated ones, and a voice. My voice. It was simple. The rules were clear. The radio would come on at intervals and I would give instructions. Sometimes it was a hint in the right direction. Other times I would say things to test their minds. You're close. You're walking in circles. You hear me, don't you? Some fell apart quickly. The heat did that to them. They begged for my help, cried on the radio, but I just watched. There was always someone nearby, far enough away to not interfere, but close enough to record. Because I needed to see how everyone dealt with it. The desert has a funny way of breaking you down. First, it makes you feel small. Afterwards, he makes you feel worthless. But the part I liked most was what came after. When they started hearing things I didn't say. When they started talking to the radio, as if I were a friend, a savior, as if I were God. I remember a guy, big, strong, confident. He started laughing, thinking it was a joke. But after a few hours, he was kneeling in the sand, holding the radio as if it were the most important thing in the world. He kept saying, "Please tell me where to go. Please just tell me." The stronger ones always lasted longer, but no one came back the same. When they finally left, when I decided they had survived, there was something different about them. The eyes, always the eyes. They saw the world differently, not as a safe place, but as an eternal desert. And you know what's funny? I never needed to force anyone. All I did was put the radio in their hands and watch. They did the rest. Because in the end, the desert doesn't need me to break people. He was already born for this. I just sped up the process.
The desert, a place that has destroyed armies and that he has turned into a tool of psychological torture. He didn't need to touch them. The environment did that for him. What disturbed me most was not what he did, but how he talked about it, as if it were a scientific experiment, something almost inevitable. And that radio, that damn radio. He didn't give orders, he took everything away, leaving only fear.
Control has always been true power. Money, fame, this is temporary. But when you control someone, not just their body, but their mind, their will, then yes, you are untouchable. That's what led me to the Marionette Project. It wasn't just blackmail, that's basic. Anyone can find dirt and threaten to use it against someone. I wanted something bigger, something permanent. So, I started investing in technology. The science of breaking someone down and putting them back together exactly how you want. First, I chose the target. Not just anyone, of course. It had to be someone important, but vulnerable. A politician, an executive, an artist. Someone with secrets. Everyone does. It's just a matter of digging deep enough. And when I found the weak point, I started working. Blackmail was the bait. A photo, a video, something they didn't want anyone to see. But that was just the beginning. Because after that came the transformation. The implant. A small, almost invisible piece, placed exactly where it needed to be. It wasn't something physical, you know? Not a remote control chip, like in the movies. It was psychological. Something that reminded them that I was always there, always. It was a fascinating process. First they resisted. They thought they could escape, that they had some power over me. Then all you had to do was press the button, not literally, but metaphorically. A call in the middle of the night, a subtle reminder of what I knew. And over time, they gave in. Everyone gives in. I remember one of them, a brilliant lawyer, the kind of person who could destroy empires with a signature. At first, she tried to negotiate, threaten, even cry. But once she realized there was no way out, she became efficient. I told her what to do, and she did it. No questions, no hesitation. And you know what's most interesting? After a while, they stop resisting. They start to believe that this is normal, that I am an inevitable force in their lives. And at this point, you don't even need to say anything. They act alone. They do what you want before you even ask. I had politicians passing laws, business people signing contracts, artists spreading messages. It was like having a whole orchestra, and I was the conductor. But best of all, they thought they were still free, living puppets. That's what they were. The wire wasn't visible, but it was there. And me? I just needed to hold the crosspiece and pull when I wanted them to dance.
This was more than control. It was total domination. He didn't just destroy people, he recreated them in his image, turning them into living tools. Worst of all, they didn't even know they were lost. An invisible army, moved by the threads he pulled. How to fight this? How to expose an enemy that doesn't even seem to exist?
There is a lake far from everything, a place that even maps forgot. I found it by chance, but since then, it has become part of me. It's deep, more than it seems, and dark, so dark that you can stare at the water for hours and never see the bottom. Perfect for storing things the world doesn't need to find. At first it was just practical, a place where I could get away from trouble. But after a while I started listening. Not while I was there, no. That's when I closed my eyes. In the silence I could hear the sounds. Whispers, muffled screams, voices that didn't rest. People say water cleans everything. I say she keeps everything. Everything that was left there is still there, waiting, calling. Sometimes I think the lake likes that he wants more. And I only give him what he asks for.
It wasn't just a hiding place. It was an altar. He spoke of that place as if it were alive, as if the lake were his accomplice. And those voices, maybe they weren't just the result of his fault. Maybe they were real. Shall we go to the last and most macabre audio? Shows what a manipulator P. Diddy is.
Did you really think that was it? That these audios were a confession? A collection of stories for you to listen to in the comfort of your safe little world? No. These audios were made for one thing. For you. You think I didn't know my phone was tapped? Now that you've heard it, you're connected to it. You know too much, you've heard things you never should have heard. And do you know what happens to those who carry that kind of weight? They don't sleep, they don't live the same way anymore. They become part of the game. The difference between you and everyone else? It's just that now I know who you are. And most importantly, I know where you are. You should never have pressed play.
It wasn't just paranoia. He knew. He always knew. These audios were not confessions, they were traps. And now, even after everything, I can't stop thinking, could I have been caught too? Where does this whole story end? This guy is one of the biggest manipulators, killers, and everything else in the world. Leave in the comments what you think of all this, and subscribe to the channel to receive more videos like this.